The devils inside the servants' skulls were trying to kill me. They plotted behind doors locked and barred and planned the downfall of the human race. I took care of the ones around me, stopped their plans. There are others, I'm sure, out there, manipulating us, secreting madness inside our very heads, while our souls are pushed into the corners of our skulls, watching as our hands do tasks that we have no control over.
You know, it can be amazing how lightning strikes. I remember back in my freshman year of high school, I had just finished playing through the first 3 installments of the Silent Hill series. I was crazy into survival horror and was looking for something new to take home and drool over, so I opened up Google and typed in scariest game ever. The top link was a YouTube video which showed a bunch of older horror titles from various systems, but one that stood out to me the most was Nintendo GameCube's Eternal Darkness Sanity's Requiem. Besides thinking that the name totally sounded like a bad Harry Potter fanfiction, I was intrigued by the promise of multiple characters, historical settings, and this weird sanity meter, so I brought it home. So this is me playing the game. A blonde female protagonist in a black tank top. She must be a real badass, I thought, somewhat disappointed by the lack of subtlety right off the bat. Fighting off zombies with a shotgun, and the game just started. I feel a little bit gypped. Where's the creeping, tension-building horror? Alas, it was just a dream, and upon being woken up, Alexandra receives a police phone call telling her to fly to Rhode Island, yada yada yada, something about her grandpa. Upon arriving at this big fancy mansion, she finds that he's fucking dead, and the police have no idea what happened. Alexandra vows to figure out who or what killed her grampy, and in reading a hidden tome is unknowingly drawn into the dark secret of the mansion and the crazy ritual competitions between the 4 gods, a skeleton in ancient armor, and everyone else who was screwed over as part of it all. Oh, did I say everyone? Oh yes, there are 12 different characters that you play as over the course of the game. Oh yes, 12! And not in the party shift kind of way, in the each of us get our own damn chapter kind of way. They're split up among 4 different historical settings: a Persian underground city, a Cambodian temple, a French cathedral, and the Roivas family mansion. And while most would think that this would stem from lazy level designs, it does add to some major suspense on the second or third run through, especially after witnessing the first adventurer's fate. Yes, while most of our poor characters suffer, pretty terrible ends. It's ridiculous how vacuous the game becomes when your heart is beating fast, waiting for your favorite character to get mauled by a panther or something. The array of playable characters is pretty fantastic, and if you played the game, you'll get what I mean when I say that based on first impressions, that's pretty unexpected. Based on the back of the box as well as the genre and general plot outline, I was mentally preparing to be let down. I mean, it presents itself from start to finish as a psychological horror, balancing ancient history as well as sci-fi and magic, which I could really only picture evolving into a hot slobbering disaster. That's why I was so surprised to find that the story actually takes place over 12 different places and moments in history from 26 BC to 2000 AD, where nearly every character is a normal person. How much more horror can you get than a game featuring a Lutheran monk? Seriously, your heroes include one blonde college student, peasant dancer, a puppy dog messenger who's so much like Wander that it makes me want to weep, a guy wearing a powdered wig, a monk who has no weapons starting out in the creepiest setting, a fat architect, an old nearsighted guy, and an anemic photographer. Okay, so you have Indiana Jones and a firefighter, but their levels aren't the greatest anyway, and even Kareem has a sword. Then again, he was kind of whipped past the point of no return. As weird as the magic casting is to get into, it adds a kind of puzzle dimension to the game, figuring out what works and what doesn't, how you can summon juggernauts to help you, or just imbue keys with fairy dust to make it magical. Usually the puzzles are discovered using new technology in a character chapter, and then implemented by Alexandra in the next mansion segment to continue the story. The whole menu is drawn out in a kind of terrifying arty way, with skeletons on pikes and all that, but it seemed to go along with whatever horrible ritual sacrifice was going on during the gameplay, so I was cool with it. In fact, the historical aspects of the game are a bigger part than the sci-fi ones most of the time, so I wasn't usually too distracted. But I do have to say that it would sometimes be a bit of a flow breaker to be jiving along with my pal Luther in his big old medieval cathedral, only to walk in on Pontus Skeletor and his alien best friend. While the magic is doable and the melee combat is kind of flustered, we all sort of know that this isn't the big reason that most people play this game anyway. Thank God there was only one mid-game boss. It's all about the sanity effects. That's why I chose Zelatoth on my first playthrough. She's the goddess who makes her sanity go down fastest, and she also has this terrifying whispering voice that totally becomes its own boss in Cathedral Part 3. The sanity effects are pretty neat. They work well because they, like the sci-fi, only happen a few times, but they're not overly distracting, most of the time. I like the sanity meter because while some games treat sanity as an on-off switch, EE takes a more realistic approach in that losing a little sanity will cause very subtle changes to the game, and in the horror genre, especially psychological horror, sometimes it's best to have the tears be more gradual, subtle, nipping at your ankles, barely noticed. Those are the kinds of unnatural occurrences that make you stop and stare for a second, pause, and then say, something's not right about this. Then a second later, you realize that there's blood coming out of the walls, or a statue is slowly turning its head to watch as you walk by, or there are little black specks buzzing around on the screen like you have flies behind the glass. Lose more sanity, and your horrified character will start swatting at the screen until her hands break off. Usually, for something substantially frightening to happen, you'll have to have your sanity totally depleted, which is rarely worth it in terms of gameplay. I said gameplay. Which is rarely worth it in terms of gameplay, since having zero sanity begins to sap your health instead. Some of these effects can be really entertaining, though. I remember once I was playing with Kareem, and out of nowhere, his head just burst off and rolled onto the floor. He kept running around like everything was fine until I made him go get it, which he picked up and displayed for me like Link getting a new item before flashing back into reality and shouting Edie's trademark cry.
This can't be happening!
Sometimes the sanity effects will make you think that your memory card is corrupt, the data froze, your TV settings changed, there's a power out. It's pretty freaky, actually, especially when you're not expecting it. In my opinion, the game is made by the sheer creepiness if you're not a history-long chapter character kind of person. If it gets to a stale point for you, you can always open up the Beast Files and listen to Max Roivas giggling and raving about the monsters and how they'll steal your bones, they will, ibble, bibble, bibble. Or you can just put together a long chain of spells and listen to the creepy god voices read it out for you. You can even be a little slow with your enemies if you've lost a fair amount of sanity, and then just wander while your character runs around on the ceiling and wails in terror. I've got to mention that it's also nice to see some narration. God, that made me happy. Not just Grampy Roivas introducing tomes. Each character had their actions carefully described and explained by an unforeseen storyteller, which I thought made the characters all seem more precious, especially since I knew they'd all probably be momentarily snuffed out and they were none the wiser. It's just heartbreaking to watch as Luther finds his only friend sacrificed on an altar, ripped to pieces, and to read, Luther suddenly realized that he was completely and utterly alone. I suppose in terms of pros and cons, I wasn't really a fan of the crawler teleporter minigames. There were moments where if you were to stumble upon a very sensitive scorpion creature, it'd teleport you to this weird holographic Wheel of Fortune sort of world that would always, without fail, break my atmospheric flow while playing. The game would do such a good job of getting me creeped out running through dark hallways, but then I'd suddenly be thrown into a game of Twister in space. Not so much scary, more annoying and stupid. The soundtrack also sounds like porno music when it's not just creepy noises, and the game is sometimes picky about when you can save. On the flip side, I came out of this game a surprised fan. I was delighted by the wide arsenal of characters with various personalities and motivations, and it was really comforting to see a narration used as an integral part of the story, not a journey on the trying to sound like a real writer is writing this train. But as for the scariest game label, I haven't played every scary game, so I can't necessarily vouch, but I find very few games scary enough to really bug me in real life. This is honestly an exception for me. The sanity effects are creepy. The body snatchers are creepy. Anthony's curse, it's creepy. Max's beast index is creepy. Bianchi's fate is creepy. The screaming eyeball tome room is creepy. It's all so unnerving and skin-crawling that it stays with you. It's not chock full of jump-out scares, except for one particularly memorable scene involving a bathtub, but I found that the "shit, there's a spider on my neck" terrors are always the ones that affect you the most. Scary doesn't always stay with you. Creepy is always there. So, would you like this game? I'd say that you'll have fun if you hate going to new settings, you get bored of protagonists really quickly, you still have a GameCube somewhere in your house, you want to become an insomniac, or you just saw Inception. I hope you enjoyed this review, and I hope you'll check the game out. I actually feel like going to play it now. All I need is my hot cup of Wait, we're out of cocoa? This can't be happening!
We must purge them from our midst. Kill them all. Cut them. Burn them. It's the only way. I know. I've done it. It